upcoming one in Richmond. I'm just a folk singer. I am a folk singer, I should say. And a plumber. And a dad. And that's what I do. And sometimes I get invited to things like this, either for plumbing or for folk singing. But tonight it's folk singing. So I'm going to start out, this song's for me, just to see if I can show up. And being in a church, in a Baptist church, I grew up in an old regular Baptist. I don't know if you know what that is. I can give you a visual. Imagine this man with really greasy hair and beady eyes saying, "You'll burn in hell!" And I was like, I'm only 6. I haven't done anything yet. It was a really small church. I mean, really small. It was like this big. And it had a wood stove. And we would go every night because there was nothing else to do. And this was the 60s, outside of Berea. And I live in a holler that my great-great-grandfather settled in. So my mother would go to church for something to do, and she would go, and this man would scream at us, and it was almost like Disney Fantasia or something. He'd be screaming about hell, and the wood stove would be glowing red. It was so hot, and I'm a kid watching all of this, and everybody looks sad, and 15 yards from our church, maybe 25 yards, was another church. At our church, it was a sin to play an instrument. You could sing, but it was a sin to play an instrument. Now I'm confused as a child, you know. But over there, you'd see people dancing by the windows and shouting, and you would hear the music bleeding out of the building, and it was just joyous. And well, anyway, it was so hot in this church, my mother would let me put my face against the window pane to stay cool, because it was really hot. And I would actually just be listening to this other church, and I would look back, and this man was screaming, and everybody looked sad, and over there, you'd see kids dancing and jumping. And so finally, when I came of age, I said, "Mama, I think God wants me to look into other denominations." Now, they had church every night, too. Like I say, there wasn't much to do in Blue Lick, Kentucky. So we would go, and Mama would let me go to that church. And it was really nice. The music really influenced my life. So I went there for about a week. I was really digging the music. And then one night, they broke out snakes. I don't like snakes. I went back to my mama. I said, "Mama, I think God wants me to look into other denominations." To make a long story even longer, there was a Catholic organization called CAP, Christian Appalachian Project. I don't know if you've heard of it. But there was a Catholic priest named Ralph Biding. And the Catholic Church sent him into eastern Kentucky to see if there were enough interest to start a parish. And he came back and said, "No, there's not, but there's a real need for help." Well, from the story I got was the church didn't fund it, but he broke away and started this organization of his own called the Christian Appalachian Project. And I still work with them sometimes. But it was really interesting. They would come into the hollers and get the poor little Appalachian kids and take us. We got to go to their camp. They had Kool-Aid and cookies. And my cousin Earl and I were like, "Sign us up, you know." So anyway, to make a long story even longer, I've looked at a lot of different religions growing up in my life. And then as an adult, I looked even farther. And over the years, I started just collecting things from different religions, little religious icons. And I put them in my yard. So I call it my sacred yard. But as a grown man, I was sitting there in my house. I have a big round window. And I was sitting there looking out. And my kids were gone. I had the house to myself. I lit some incense, get that songwriter ambiance thing going on, you know, and got some coffee, and I was ready for the sky to open and God to give me a song. And then this car pulls up in my drive, and I live way out in the middle of nowhere. You don't accidentally come to my house, you know. And these 2 young guys with ties, they both had on white shirts and a tie. This was another exposure to a different religion for me. And they were like, "Hi, can we talk to you about God?" And I was like, "Sure, come on in." Oh, but 10, 15 minutes into it, they're like, "Well, brother, we better get going." I'm like, "What's your hurry?" I think I scared them. But anyway, as they were leaving, they were walking down through all these things I had in my yard, my totem poles and different things, you know, and this song came to me. I really got to work on my introduction. Outside in my front yard, got a plastic rooster and a Noah's Ark. Camel bells from a foreign land, crystal ball on a terracotta stand. Jesus' cross is hanging in the trees, Tibetan prayer flags blowing in the breeze. Rub my lucky yard gnome as you walk past, my concrete Buddha laughing in the grass. Wipe your feet before you step from your car, you're on hallowed ground, you're in my sacred yard. Holy water in the bird bath to wash your sins, now you're forgiven. Come on in. Got a silver star of David, a stained glass moon, sentimental objects hanging in my room. Everything is sacred, every breath of air. Be careful what you're thinking, every thought's a prayer. It's the ordinary people you talk to every day, incantations and prophecies from the mouths of babes. You can talk about the weather or the food you crave. It's the feelings you project, not the words you say. Wipe your feet before you step from your car, you're on hallowed ground, you're in my sacred yard. Holy water in the bird bath to wash your sins, now you're forgiven. Come on in. If you're searching for happiness, try not to look so hard. Take you a lawn chair. Go out in your yard and stare straight up at the sky so blue. Yeah, God's in heaven, but heaven's in you. Wipe your feet before you step from your car, you're on hallowed ground, you're in my sacred yard. Holy water in the bird bath to wash your sins, now you're forgiven. And I'm forgiven. Well, we're all forgiven. Come on in. Come on in. Hi to St. Pete. Wipe your feet. Thank you. Like I said, that one was for me, just to show up. I am a songsmith, a songwriter. I've played with words all my life. My grandmother encouraged me to write, to read and to write, and to read about Kentucky authors. And she really knew that I would have to deal with the Appalachian stereotype. And somehow that affected my life in such a way that, I spent years doing the get famous, be Elvis thing. That didn't work out so well. But then I discovered that I could use music as a healing, because it had been a healing thing for me, but I could use it for other people. And I started working in schools. I've been with the Kentucky Arts Council for almost 30 years. But about 25 years ago, I realized that I could take that a step farther. And sometimes when you say things, you're like, you can't really back it up, or you haven't backed it up yet. I used to tell these kids, storytelling is so healing. Like if you knock over the lamp and your mother comes in and you said, the dog did it. And then you feel really guilty, and then a week later you tell the truth and you feel so much better. That was my little analogy of how storytelling is healing. And over the years, it's become so much more than that. And anyway, that particular one was in Los Angeles in an inner city school. And they said, you tell a story, a real story. When I was a little boy, my cousin Earl and I were playing with paper airplanes in my grandpa's house. It was after my grandma was dead. And I think it was cousin Earl, but one of us said, wouldn't it be cool if we set them on fire and they looked like they were crashing? It was Earl, I think. But we did that, and then we went over across the holler to my Aunt Myrtle's to have supper or lunch, and my grandpa was out in the woods cutting firewood. And my Aunt Myrtle she would literally make a bucket of beans. It had a handle, and it was a bucket. And she was carrying these beans across the kitchen, and she looked out the window, and she dropped the bucket, and the beans went all over the place, and we all ran to the window. And my grandfather's house burnt to the ground. Now, I was almost 30 years old when I told that story, because my cousin Earl and I looked at each other like, don't say a word. It happened that fast. And my grandfather lost everything. And we held on to that secret until I was at that school in inner city LA, and I told that story. And I was like, Oh, so that's what you mean. Storytelling can be very healing. And then my mother heard me in a school one day, and she's like, what? It caught up with me. But then I learned that there's a lot of folks that are in bad situations, and they tell their stories. I have a program I call Story to Song. And in that, I usually run my mouth like this. I'm a storyteller, I can't help it. But I'll tell my stories and where my songs come from and play my songs and establish this communication and this vulnerability. And then they open up and tell their story. Why are you in this situation? How did you get in this situation? And then we end up writing songs about their stories. There's so many people, and I know what tonight is about. It's about bail, and there's so many people. I'm from Madison County, getting ready to build a new jail, and I can't help, it's just my opinion. I'm a folk singer and a plumber, but my opinion, there's a lot of people hurting, and they need help. But instead, we're going to build a bigger jail so we can house more of those people. Those people. I hear that all the time. You work with those people. It's like, yeah, those people are black, white, rich, poor, religious, non-religious, you know, those people. Anyway, I was working with some young women in Pikeville, Kentucky. And we wrote this song, and we came up with the verses, and when we wrote the verses, they were like, it's honest, but it's too sad. Let's not finish it. And I said, no, that's the beauty of writing a song, is you get to write the chorus now, and the chorus is like this knight in shining armor that comes riding in and saves the day. I said, you know, I was at this doctor's office, and I was waiting in the waiting room, and I picked up one of those medical magazines, and it said, if you read to yourself silently, it goes to one part of your brain, but if you read to yourself out loud, it goes to another part of your brain. I don't know if I actually read that in a magazine, but they bought it, and we finished the song. We wrote this chorus with a magic chorus. And if you sing this chorus out loud, you will receive a healing. Y'all with me? Pretty Polly felt so all alone. She sang herself a sad song. She had no husband or no family, so she hang herself in her pity tree. You're not so alone. You're not really that different. Everybody needs someone to hold their heart, their pain, their forgiveness. Now that's the magic chorus, y'all. If you sing it out loud, you will receive a healing. Guaranteed. She filled herself with lots of things, but inside she felt so empty. She had booze and pills and sweets and dreams. Every night she cried herself to sleep. Here you go. You're not so alone. You're not really that different. Everybody needs someone to hold their heart, their pain, their forgiveness. Some of y'all sang, you don't trust the folk singer. This music changed the world once, almost. Over on the other side of town, in a window with no curtains, sat a lonely boy, nay, a clown. He could not hide his hurtin'. The place he lived, he paid no rent. The building was abandoned, just like him. And the way he felt that night, she left him standing. Last time. You're not so alone. You're not really that different. Everybody needs someone to hold their heart, their pain, their forgiveness. Oh, I forgot to tell you. If you look somebody else right in the eye and sing this with your heart, you get like a double whammy healing. I ain't lying, y'all. I'm telling you a story. You're not so alone. You're not really that different. Everybody needs someone to hold your heart, your pain, your forgiveness. It was 19 young teenage mothers wrote that song. Thank y'all very much for letting me sing.
Thank you, Mitch, for opening us up this morning, this evening, with that wonderful, your wonderful stories and the stories of healing and the music, because that's kind of what we need sometimes. We need the music to help heal us in times of grief. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
On behalf of the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy, the Kentucky Council of Churches, and our partners, the ACLU of Kentucky, the Arts Connection of Eastern Kentucky, Louisville Family Justice Advocates, and the Bail Project of Louisville, we welcome you to our Justice Through Bail Reform, an evening of faith and facts. I offer thanks to our host pastor, the Reverend Mark Johnson, and the Central Baptist Church for being our host. Let's give him a round of applause and thank him for hosting us this evening. On this day of new beginnings, this day, a special day, as we have inaugurated another governor, Governor Beshear, and another lieutenant governor, Lieutenant Governor Coleman, there's a poem that's entitled Stirred Up by the Rain by Chase Twitchell that came to mind as I was thinking across and thinking about this evening. The poem simply says, I fired up the moor, although it was about to rain, a chill in late September afternoon, wildflowers reseeding themselves in the blue smoke of the gas oil mix. To be attached to things is illusion, yet I am attached to things. Cold, clouds, wind, color, the sky. One of two things can happen. Either the noisy machine dissolves in the dusk and the dust takes refuge in the steady rain, or the meadow is cleared of flowers. Believing is different than understanding. So what do we believe? What do we understand about bail reform and about justice for bail reform? What do we need to stir up this coalition so that we might get about and do action? I can fire up the motor tonight. That is what all of you are here for, but it's been raining in the lives of people who are being incarcerated and who remain incarcerated because they have not had a fair and equitable bail hearing across this Commonwealth. The inequity in our bail system is part of the inequity of our complete justice system. So let's not be attached to the illusion of justice. One of two things can happen. As we tackle bail reform, we will either get chewed up by the noise of the upcoming election or the General Assembly, or we'll get chewed up and our concerns will dissolve in the rain as they have before, or we can get fired up and we can fire up the motor and stir some things up this year. And that's what I believe we're here to do. We're here to stir it up. Somebody say, stir it up. Stir it up. Our faith leads us to believe in the equity and the dignity of all of God's creation. And it's that human dignity that is being trampled and attacked by the illusion of justice. And that is why we need to gain understanding and the true essence of what is going on with the issue of bail. Tonight, you possibly will hear from two impacted persons. One is on her way still, one is already here, who can share of the inequity of the denial or the denial of justice through bail. Tonight, you will hear fact-based information from data collected across the state and in particular Fayette County. Tonight, you will learn of the difficulty of persons awaiting trial to receive bail. Tonight, you will be able to place the facts with your faith. When you think about it, it's not right that upwards of 30% of the inmates incarcerated in Fayette County Detention Center are based on pretrial. It's not right that those who are pretrial incarcerated are more likely to accept bad plea deals so that they can be released. It's not right that based on nothing but subjectivity that some are held and some are allowed bail. Tonight, as people of faith, we will gain a deeper understanding that will back our belief, that I believe will propel us into action. Tonight, let us open our hearts and our minds, our faith and our reasoning so that we can see justice through bail reform. Will you pray with me? God of justice, God of love, God of all creation, we come invoking your divine presence into this place. Not just this place of bricks and mortar, but into this place, into our lives, so that we might be impacted by you, so that we can go out and impact the world. We pray for those who are still on their way. We pray for those who are here who will speak and tell of their stories, their testimonies. We pray that you would have your way. We ask it now, and we ask it in the one whom I know as my Savior, Jesus, who is the Christ. And let us all who are gathered declare together, amen, amen, and amen. Tonight, you will hear testimonies. You will hear from Alex Elswick. You will hear from Tana Fogel. You will hear tonight from Dr. Ashley Spalding. So at this time, I'm going to ask if Brother Alex Elswick will come forward and tell us of his testimony. Amen. Let's give him a round of applause.
Your name's Mitch? How about another round of applause for Mitch? That's awesome, man. That's good vibe. Good vibe in here tonight. My name is Alex Elswick, and I work at the University of Kentucky. I'm a subject matter specialist for substance use prevention and recovery, which I'm aware is a really obnoxiously long title. Working on changing that. I'm a PhD candidate at UK, so I do research on addiction recovery. I'm also the co-founder of a nonprofit organization here in Lexington called Voices of Hope, and we serve the recovery community, and often that overlaps with folks who become justice involved. But most importantly, I'm a person in long-term recovery from an addiction to heroin and Oxycontin. And I want to start just by saying thank you to all of you for being here. Thank you to the hosts, and thank you to you all. It means a lot to me. It does a lot of good for my heart to see so many people from the community coming here to be allies. I think it says a lot about each of you as individuals that you're willing to do that with your Tuesday night. And I'll tell you why I'm willing to do it with my Tuesday night. I actually had a hell of a day at work. There are a lot of things I could be doing, but I'd rather be here. And it's because I know that the only reason that I'm not in prison today is because our justice system dispenses justice predicated not only on right and wrong, not only on merit, but also on things like power and privilege and money and the color of somebody's skin. And I want to share with you some of my experiences being justice involved, and I'll let you be the judge. So I should start by saying when I was 18 years old, I was arrested on drug trafficking charges, and it was a long, nasty list of drug trafficking charges. It carried a potential sentence of years and years in prison and a $50,000 cash bond. And I made the mistake of getting arrested on a holiday weekend. Not a good idea because the judge doesn't come in on Monday. So that meant that for 72 hours, my bond wasn't 10%. So that means for 72 hours, my parents scrambled to come up with cash bond. There's a problem though, all the banks are closed for a holiday, which means They only had access to an ATM. That means a $500 a day limit. And don't you know it, they were still able to come up with $50,000 cash in a suitcase, even though the banks were closed, right? So without knowing anything else about me, what does that tell you about me, about where I come from, about the privilege that I hold, about the life that I've lived, right? That's important. And at this juncture, the only reason that I'm outside of a jail cell and some of these other guys that I was locked up with are still in a jail cell is money, right? Is money. It's not the nature of our charges. It's our wherewithal. But it gets even worse. That alone would be an egregious miscarriage of justice. But it gets worse because my money didn't only buy me my freedom, it also bought me time. It bought me time because if I was sitting in a jail cell, I would be strongly motivated to accept a really poor plea deal so I could get out, right? But I didn't have to be concerned with that because instead I was laying my head on my pillow every night, enjoying my freedom. I had the wherewithal to get a private attorney to pose a rigorous defense so I could get a plea deal that worked for me, and I got those charges probated. That doesn't seem right. I want to share one more thing with you. In 2017, almost 5 years to the day post-conviction, I had the opportunity to get some of my record expunged. And there are two things I remember about that experience that stand out to me, two ways in which I was different from everybody else who was in the courtroom that day. And the first is probably pretty apparent, which is everybody else in that courtroom was adding charges to their record, and I was having charges taken away, right? Which is important. But the second thing, and I'm going to make a wild assumption here, but let's call a spade a spade. I was the most privileged person in that room without question. There's no question that I came from the wealthiest background in that room, from the most power, from the most access. There's no question. And do you think that that's a coincidence? Is it a coincidence that the person in the room who held the most privilege is also the only person in the room who is having charges subtracted from his record rather than added? It's not a coincidence, you all. In my line of work, we call it a strong association, right? So I guess I would conclude by saying this. Any system of justice that dispenses justice predicated on anything other than merit, anything other than right and wrong, is not a system of justice. It's not dispensing what is just. The reality is that the color of my skin made a difference. The money that my parents have made a difference. And that's not a system that I want to be a part of. I know that in order for us to enact real reform and make real change, it can't come only from a community of people who've been impacted by incarceration. It can't come only from a community of people who are justice involved. And part of the reason for that is because we, as a society, cut their legs out from under them and take away their rights. Hopefully under a new administration that's going to change. But it's also because I feel that it's my responsibility as a person of privilege to use my privilege to advocate on behalf of those who can't. And so I want to encourage you all tonight to do that so that we can have a system that actually dispenses justice. Thank you all.
Good evening. Is that, the volume's great? Okay. Thank you for coming tonight to learn about our state's unjust bail system and what it means for the residents of Fayette County and what we can do about it, what we can do to change it. My name's Ashley Spalding. I'm a senior policy analyst with the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy located in Berea. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, and we have a staff who are residents of Fayette County. Our organization focuses on data analysis and advocacy work that focuses on the policies that we believe will improve quality of life for all Kentuckians. And bail reform is one of these critical policies that we believe will move our local communities and the state forward. First, let's talk very broadly about what bail is. When a person's arrested, for the majority of crimes, with just a few exceptions, a judge ultimately decides whether they will be what is called released on their own recognizance, or pretty much released from jail and told they need to make sure to come back to court for their court dates, or whether they're subject to money bail, when an amount of money must be paid either in full or 10% in some cases before they can be released. And then if they don't appear in court, they forfeit this money. Bail is intended to prevent people from fleeing. And we have some famous cases in our state of what it really means to flee, right, the country and go to, I'm not sure, the Pizza Hut in Latin, right? But there are some cases, that is what is meant by flight in these cases, right? Bail is intended to prevent people from fleeing and not showing up to trial by causing them to have money at stake. But in Kentucky and many other places, money bail is used to keep a large share of people locked up, even if they're unlikely to flee. And for the majority of people, that's the case. Even relatively low amounts of bail are unaffordable for many Kentuckians. It's expensive to flee, right? And as we talk about this issue, we must keep in mind that these are people presumed innocent given their awaiting trial. When making bail decisions, a judge in Kentucky can consider a number of things, including what the prosecutor recommends. The crime a person is being charged with can be a factor, but by law cannot be the only factor. Among the considerations are a person's calculated likelihood of failing to appear in court or engaging in a new crime while awaiting trial. And this is based mostly on a person's prior experiences with the justice system. By law, a person who's considered to be low or moderate risk of failing to appear in court or being rearrested is supposed to be released without money bail. If this happened, around 90% of people would be released pretrial in Kentucky without money bail. However, what we see happening is just 40% of cases result in release without money bail statewide, despite this law. And in Fayette County, it's just 18%. Just 18% of cases result in release without money bail. That's right, Fayette County has one of the lowest rates of pretrial release in the entire state. And to provide some more context, in Jefferson County, it's 53%. 53% of cases result in release without financial conditions, and that is still too few. And for many Kentuckians, money bail is just not affordable. In Fayette County, for the cases subject to money bail, just 31% are able to afford to get out. And research shows that African Americans are often treated more harshly than the defendants who are white in pretrial decisions, and we know that our justice system is harsher on Latino and Hispanic people as well. So what does this mean from a research perspective? Because that is what our organization is known for. Well, locking up so many people presumed innocent and awaiting trial does not make us safer. And in the end, it could even lead to more crimes being committed down the road because spending time in jail is a very damaging experience, physically, psychologically, relationally, economically, and more. Being locked up while awaiting trial often means losing a job and separation from family members, including children. Being locked up while supposedly presumed innocent and awaiting trial makes a person more likely to plead guilty to a crime, even when innocent, just to get out, so to take a plea deal. And in Kentucky, we don't have a law guaranteeing a case will go to court in a timely manner if you are incarcerated pretrial. So people end up incarcerated for a very long time. I recently had the opportunity to see some art that was made by a woman incarcerated in Knox County. And she is a mother of 3, and at the time that she made this art, she had been incarcerated for 3.5 years awaiting trial. And if a person takes their case to trial, they're more likely to be found guilty in court if they've been incarcerated pretrial. This is what the research shows. Think about the impact it may make to even be dressed in a jail uniform while trying to participate in your own defense. And that criminal conviction from a plea deal or otherwise, especially if it is a felony, as I'm sure you all know, has absolutely devastating collateral consequences down the road on the ability to get a job, housing, especially a decent job. Health has an impact on health and on children and families. And we're talking about a large number of people who are impacted by these policies and practices. There are currently, I just checked, and there are currently 1,325 people right now incarcerated in the Fayette County Jail, and a good share are pretrial. All the information that I was just presenting is well backed up in research, scholarship, and if you're interested in learning more about those citations, we do have some materials here, but please keep in touch with us. Make sure to sign the sign-in sheet, and I'll be talking about some more data a little bit later on. And we'll have a Q&A after.
we're inviting Tana Fogel to come. She's had a long day. We were in Frankfurt, and she's had to drive around, but we want to hear her story now. Amen.
I'm gonna catch my breath because apparently someone didn't tell Sirius in the GPS that Central Baptist Church has moved. And so the address is 1644 in the GPS. So I've been running around Central Baptist Hospital looking for the church after driving from Frankfurt. But it's my honor to be here. I am Tana Fogel. I'm a mother of 2 and a grandmother of 11. And I'm proud to say that. We had an awesome day in Frankfurt today. And we had to take a lot of pictures with our new governor and our new lieutenant governor, and it was a fantastic day. But let me get to the business at hand. So my inmate number was 4685. My basketball number at UK was 55. There's something going on with those fives for you people who play the lottery. But what I want to talk about is the collateral damage that you mentioned. Not only when I was incarcerated, my children were incarcerated also. My mom was incarcerated. The whole entire family was incarcerated. Because if you look at our economy, and they say Kentucky's broke, and that's a lie anyway, but they could save a lot more money for people who have committed crimes that is nonviolent, such as receiving stolen property, drug, substance misuse and abuse. And that's what my charge was. Try to make some money, call myself a dope dealer, and you can't be a very good dope dealer if you're your best customer. So when I went to court, I was imprisoned. I sat there waiting to bond. We are working class poor, and my mother was very poor. But we didn't know it. She had 8 children, and she worked very hard. And she gave us some morals and values. But at a particular time in my life, after graduating from the University of Kentucky, instead of going right, I went left. And so I broke the law. I was given a 10-year sentence for substance misuse, and I sat in jail waiting for a bond. Could not afford it. And so they came with the pretrial. Now, in my heart, and what I know today, is the crime that I committed was facilitation. It wasn't trafficking, because the informant consumed it. He should have went to jail with me. So my mom did all she could, and it broke her heart to see her youngest child go to prison. What does bail and the lack of bail do? It separates the family. And the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, because my sons have felonies. And they gave me a $3,000 bond for my youngest child who ran away from the police. $3,000. And my oldest child, who has felony charges for child support, his bond was $10,000. Where was I supposed to get that money? So now we have to raise his children like my mother had to raise my children. It is a generational curse. It is a shame for an individual to sit in jail and you miss the first steps of your child, and you miss his first tooth coming in because you're sitting there waiting for a bond so that you can go to court. And so all those stages that your children go through, you miss that stage. And there's no making that up because of our system being so poor. Non-violent charges, even violent charges, should be given. The bond should not be $50,000 because you're a drug trafficker. There is no way. So the system is set up for us to fail. While the government says, the opiate crisis, oh, we've got a crisis. Well, we had a crisis when crack cocaine hit the city too. So who gets the bond and who doesn't? And I'm not going to get into systemic racism, but you best believe that that's a part of it. The working class poor and poor folk should not be penalized and set in incarceration waiting to go to trial. And you know the worst part of it? I know at least 25 people who sat in prison for 3 or 4 years and was found innocent because they couldn't make the bond. So who gets to get that time back? I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to tell you guys other than what you already know, but God. You see people like me and Amanda Hall and other folks sitting in this room, you don't throw us away. You don't let us sit in jail and rot. Because look at us now. Can you imagine how many years that could have been tapped into with our skills? So what are we going to do about it, folks? We can talk about it. We can give statistics. We can do everything that we're doing tonight. But unless we put some action and that we get loud and that we get behind this bail reform, then they will continue to do what they've always done. It's a fixed fight. We get on the wheel, and believe you me, I should have went to jail. Thank you, Lord, for letting them not see the other stuff. I should have went to jail. But I shouldn't have had to rot in there because I couldn't afford the bail. I should not have. And neither should anybody else that's sitting in here that went through the same thing. I don't know. I hope I came and I hope I did the thing that I was supposed to do. I want y'all to know I'm headed to Natural Bridge. No, it ain't no vacation. That's work. I've got to get up there. We have a staff retreat. And it just goes on. Please do not grow weary in well-doing. All right? Mount up on wings like eagles. Run. Don't faint. We need you. We need you all to believe that this project will work. I read somewhere, and I might be wrong, 47 or 49 people got to go to Thanksgiving down in Louisville or somewhere. I read something about that. Y'all need a clap. Come on with that. Because this project right here was able to generate the funds, and then it's just going to be generated and generated. If you're from Lexington, Kentucky, can we beat Louisville in something other than football? Can we get this thing going and get some people out of jail that's sitting there? There's some children that need their parents. I just want to thank y'all for the moments that I shared with y'all, and I hope to see you. If I don't see you, Merry Christmas. I'm going to get me a hug from Amanda and Shamika, and I love y'all.
Bless you. Love you. Me too. I think Tana has already introduced who's coming next. And so we're going to ask if Shamika Parrish Wright would come forward from the Bell Project of Louisville. She's already set the tone, so come on up here, Shamika. No, she might, but she might.
Okay, I have to roll with it, right? All right. Thank you all for showing up today. I first want to thank the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy, the Kentucky Council of Churches, our community partners, which are the Presbyterian Church, PCUSA, LSURGE, which is Louisville Showing Up for Racial Justice, Louisville Metro Public Defenders, Louisville Family Justice Advocates, ACLU of Kentucky, and Smart Justice, and all of you for caring about justice for all through bail reform. It is so important that you show up and you give this the attention that you're giving it, because we all are stakeholders and we all are connected in some way to criminal justice reform, bail reform. We're all connected. So first, I have so much to share with you all, but I have 17 minutes according to the agenda. Okay. The elephant in the room, there are rumors that we are just bailing people out. I want to be clear, and I want to clear up any doubt. We are primarily disrupting the cash bail system for justice involved community members. So yes, we are primarily bailing people out. And I am unapologetic about that. By getting them out pretrial is the most important thing that we're set up to do. We are the Bail Project, but we do not want to become an arm of the justice system. We don't want the judge to say, send them to the Bail Project. We want to work ourselves out of a job. That's not all we do, but it's what we as an organization are trying to do well. We are not social workers or lawyers. Our main goal is more community releases with supports so that we can work ourselves out of that job. Our network of community partners help us to access needs of our clients and connect them to resources. We do not work against local community bail funds. We work to have a bigger impact on the criminal justice reform. Through looking at the whole client, we get access to their failure to appear, we get access to previous charges, but it is not until we go in and we interview the clients that we get the whole client. We learn about their needs, we learn about their family responsibility, we make our decisions based on, will they lose their job if they sit in here? Will they lose custody of their children? Will they lose housing? Will they even lose a bed and treatment? Those are the kind of things that we use to inform our decisions. So through looking at the whole client, we're working to ensure that freedom should be free. You know, for me, it's personal. Like Alex, like Tana, like Ashley, like Reverend, everyone spoke to everything that I've directly experienced. At 18, I found myself in jail defending myself from my fiance, who was the son of a sheriff, and I had a 3-year-old daughter, so I was a teen mom on my way to college, trying to figure life out. I defended myself because I was being abused, and because I picked up a weapon that made me have a violent charge. I want to be sure that you know that poverty is violent. Yeah. That poverty creates despair. That poverty should not be a crime. And poverty can also be empowering. So when people say, how many clients are you giving wraparound services to? I say to them that we want most of our clients to get out, because the very moment that they get out, it increases a better outcome in our justice system. The moment they get out, it helps to ensure that freedom should be free. It helps to ensure that they are innocent until proven guilty. This is pre-trial. I know what it's like to sit in there. And I will tell you, in 1995, sitting in that jail cell at 18 years old for 38 days and not being able to see my daughter, I was ready to say whatever, do whatever I needed to do to get out. And that is the decisions that many people make every day. So when I was offered a plea deal, I took it. And now I'm 42, and if you run my fingerprints, that charge comes up. I didn't receive wraparound supports when the system let me out after taking that plea deal, and I still found something great to do with my life. I still found a way to steer clear from that. Even though I've been directly impacted by incarceration on every level, my father spent 40 of his 56 years on this earth in and out of jail. My brother is now serving 10 years in jail. I'm helping to care for his kids. So when people say we can't, people have to self-identify on what their needs are, and we meet them as much as we can. We bailed out over 1,600 people, and over 200 of those needed help, mostly with transportation to get to and from court. That is one of the biggest barriers for many people, even our homeless clients, getting back to court. So there is this assumption that a failure to appear is intentional. But if you're not there in that person's life, you don't understand what happened, what emergency came up, what reason they are really missing court. So we got to get out of this mind frame that once we see someone and they're incarcerated, that they're automatically guilty. We have to work together to dismantle pretrial incarceration. This is where, for me, it's important for faith communities to be a part of this. I like to think, as we've been talking about, this issue of unaffordable cash bail has crept alongside this train headed towards mass incarceration for so long, unchecked. It's an unchecked power that's been given, and it's being used to keep people in jail till they plea and till they give the system what they want. And people say, how can an innocent person plead guilty to something? Well, if you're sitting in there, you want to know when you're getting out. And sometimes you don't know that until you take a plea deal. And that's scary, right? I thought, oh, I'll do this probation. I'll take that 2 years probation. Till when I apply for jobs, they're saying, you were charged with a felony, but you were convicted of a misdemeanor. So every time I have to go and explain every level of this, even though I've graduated college, I've been appointed by the mayor of the boards, I've done all this amazing thing. But it always goes back to what I did in 1995 at 18 years old. So it stays with you. And so when people make these decisions, it's important that we consider that these are decisions that stay with them and can stay with them for a lifetime. We must work together to dismantle the injustices in our justice system. We need judges, lawyers, churches, community groups, and individuals to be aware and to speak about the issues that are happening. I asked our biggest community partner, who we get most of our referrals from, about 95% in Louisville, we get in Jefferson County, come from our Louisville Metro Defenders. And so I asked them for a statement because I was coming to see you. I've been given permission by some of our clients to share some of the things that they've experienced, but I also wanted to speak from this legal perspective. This is from Amy Hanna. She's our main contact with the Louisville Metro Public Defenders. She says, the Bail Project is a game changer for many of our clients. An individual's custody status is regularly used as leverage to resolve cases. The Bail Project's posting a bond for those presumed innocent affords that find themselves enmeshed in the criminal justice machine the ability to challenge an unfair system in dire need of reform. And this messaging is not only from her as a public defender. I have judges that have inboxed me and lawyers and even prosecutors that agree. They say sometimes they're even pushing, they're not fighting against a bail decision. Sometimes those decisions are made or have already been made before they even can say things about it. I think that it's all of our jobs to work against this. So Holly McGlon-Zoller is one of our bail disruptors working on the ground every day. Today, she took about $75,000 to get out 22 people before I came here tonight. Thank you. So it's true, over a week before Thanksgiving and the week of Thanksgiving, we got together and we did everything we could to bring 42 people home with their families. But this is work that we do every day. Right now, we are helping to get people out who have just had babies, who have children at home, who gives their Aunt Mary her medications, who takes her to her appointments. We're meeting people who are dealing with everyday struggles that you and I are able to navigate because we have our freedom. I asked Holly to give me some feedback on what she saw today, and I want to share with you what she said that just happened. She said after a year and a half, because we started in May of 2018, it was just Holly and myself. Now our staff is continuing to grow. It's 4 of us now, and we just got a new data and finance person. You can't see her work because we're low tech today, and I love it because I hate reading PowerPoints. But so she says, after a year and a half, the thing finally happened to me that I've been waiting for. Today I was paying bonds and was watching a woman count out cash in small bills and overheard a name. I walked up to her and told her that we had already paid the bond and that she was so happy because now she could use the money to get their car out of impound and go to work. The choice is in poverty: pay for the car to get to work or pay for freedom. It makes me want to cry, right? Because I understand that all too well. Sometimes we help to get someone out and their family is able to pay for more legal defense. That's what we want. We want them to have better outcomes. And like Tana said, some of our clients say, hey, Shamika, I did do this thing, but I didn't do this, or I need time to resolve my personal issues before I face this. People understand justice. They understand when they've done something they shouldn't have done, but they also understand injustice and when they're receiving unfair sentences and fair bail amounts. We see people getting out at different rates. You have a paid attorney, your odds are different. And we're working with the public defenders because guess what? We give them more of a fighting muscle. Sometimes they'll text me in the middle of the night and say, hey, I got an emergency bailout. This person's going to take this 8-year plea deal if they don't get out. And they've already been sitting in there a year and a half. And they're going to take this plea deal because they want to know what their out date is. And I'm rushing down there to pay that bail. And just as Tana spoke about, we just had a gentleman that made our front page news. 6 years the public defenders fought his case in a capital murder case. It was overturned. And he sat in jail for 6 years. He lost everything. He's a black man, gained 100 pounds. They pulled 13 teeth from him while he was incarcerated. The local jail tells me it costs around $81 a day per person that is incarcerated. And if you have mental health or other issues around treatment, that's an additional $300 a day that it costs to keep them there, with the average stay being 23 days. But we've bailed people out that have been incarcerated pre-trial 2 years, 1 year. We bailed teenagers out that were riding in the back of a car that got into an accident and they all get charged. As you heard Alex's story, as you heard my story, many times when someone becomes just as involved is when they're in their teenage years, right? You don't know. Your friend pulls up and say, get in the car, let's go to the mall. Guess what? You're getting in the car. You don't know if the car is stolen. You don't know anything. You're in the back seat having a good time with your friends. And one thing happens and you're all incarcerated. This young man, that happened to him at 15. 17, we paid his bail, and his next court date isn't until 2020 of February. His mom has to watch him age in there. I just left Chicago. I went up there for a training, and then I stayed because we have a Chicago site, and they did a jail tour, and they told us that they have over so many of their people that are incarcerated end up sitting there so long pre-trial that they serve over the time that a judge would give them. So this equivalent is 246 years for the people who've served over. So that means you're in there, you go to court, 2-3 years it takes you to finish your case. You just the judge says, oh, you've done enough time. You get dressed out, go to the prison, get a number, come right back and you're released. And guess what happens? You go to that prison, you get that number. Now you got a prison number for the rest of your life, and you were already in jail pre-trial, so you've already served that out. Why do you have to give them the prison number and further stigmatize them for the rest of their life? This is in Chicago. It's a bigger city, but it is coming here. There's Vera Justice. Is that the Vera Justice Institute report that says over 100 years, everyone in our state would be incarcerated? We are in an incarcerated state. So we need to support work that is about decarceration. And you do that with policy. You do that with data. So yes, we do collect data. That data is to inform that policy because we're asking about family responsibility. We're asking what happens when you're in here. We know that by the third day, somebody's life is falling apart. And it's disheartening. I want to give you some facts before I wrap up. There are, I want to make sure I quote this right. In our jail, we've bailed out 1,636 people. And let me see, since May of 2018. And the need is so great. The jail even credited us for helping to reduce the overcrowding. It was over 2,009 people this time last year, and now it's 1,700, and our jail has the capacity of 1,793. Now, yes, some more people are being picked up to go to the prisons, but that doesn't account for the amount of people we've been able to help, and it's drastically reduced. No other pilot program or program in the justice system is able to remove people as fast as we are. But we can get faster if we motivate our judges to use all that damn judicial discretion they got and let people out, right? They can choose 6 other options besides imposing an unaffordable cash bail. They can have you calling every day. They can have you taking a drug test. You can go to a day reporting center. They don't have to do this. And they do it based on media fallback. They don't want somebody to say, oh, you release somebody and they reoffend. This is what I tell people. Anybody that gets out of jail, that goes back to the same environment that they were in to get them in there, is subjectable to reoffending. If we're not dealing with the root causes of why they even got in jail in the first place, you cannot penalize us for getting people out and being mad. The court system lets a lot of people out, and they're not held to the same standards. But yes, every night I'm watching the news and I'm like, please don't let anybody that we bailed out reoffend, because they want to use that to attack our work, to attack our organization. And that's why we need to be here in these spaces. That's why we need to do exactly what you're doing. So that community can say, yeah, Johnny might have reoffended, but look at all of these people who got out and were able to get, to get things taken care of. So I want to ask you a question. I have 2 extra large shirts like me. Freedom should be free. Bail Project shirts. So, if you're really petite, you can give it to somebody else. I want to ask that, let me think of a question that will, who do you think we bail out the most? White men. Yes, white men and poor white people. You win a shirt. Okay, let me think. Here's a question I get asked about a lot. What do you think our return rate from 0 to 100%? What do you think our return rate? This means people we've paid bills for, they come back to court, they do what they need to do and see their cases through. You're very close. Does anybody want to counter that? 90. It is about 93%. Who should get it? You can get it. Thank you, though. You were very close. If you contact me, I'll send you a shirt. All right. You can come and get your... I'm sorry? Okay. Nice. Oh, yeah. I like that. That's how you pay it forward, right? All right. Thank you. Oh, you make me... I'm almost finished. I'm almost done, I promise. I'm thinking about that 17 minutes. So you remind me of the biggest point I want to make to you, and it relates to faith. I do see this as a faith-based issue. And when we go in and I interview a client or a potential client, the most motivating thing for them is when I say, when we come in, we don't charge you. We don't charge your family. We're not bail bondsmen. I have to tell them we're not going to send Dog the Bounty Hunter after you. We are here for good faith. We want to give you a chance to fight your case from the outside. We know that your results, like Ashley said, are so much better when you're able to do that. But we need you to come back because we are a revolving community bail fund, which means we need most of the money to come back so that we can get someone out. That is the most motivating thing. They've taken our cards, they've scratched my name. Someone was getting out and they were like, you know your name is scratched inside of the wall in the jail by the phone? We went viral in the jails, and so we've opened it up to community, and they'll go to the website, they Facebook me, all of these things. But the most motivating thing, we'll go to an interview, and they'll have this weather tethered card that look like it's been passed through 20 people, and they'll say, someone was getting out, and they gave this to me. If that's not faith, if people are at the lowest point of their life, and they're still thinking about the next person, that is so powerful. That is so motivating, because that tells you faith is it. Community is it. That's how we win this. So I'm not going to go over the too many technical numbers, but we've spent over $5 million. We've saved our city, our county, and I've started bailing people out in the surrounding counties as well. I want to take this work. I want to take it to every county in Kentucky, all 120 counties. We've gotten over almost 2 million back. That's people who've gotten in, got their cases resolved. We get the money back. It goes in our bail fund. We're fighting forfeitures. We have a lawyer, attorney Ted Schaus, who is an amazing criminal justice lawyer, and he is fighting forfeitures because in 2017, the whole county took they had 9 forfeitures for the whole year. By the end of 2018, and we started in 5, by December of 2018, they had already taken 11 of our bails. So as we're trying to improve our return rate to 96%, we're doing court reminders. We even pay for a lift for them to get to court and back. I was driving them, and then they were like, you can't keep doing that. And so we're doing everything we can to get people back. But we have community buy-in. People are saying, hey, how can I show up and help? So visit bailproject.org to learn more. Tomorrow I have a very important phone call that is, someone called me and said, we need this in Fayette County. So we are working on getting this here. I am so excited. I've already paid 1 bail here. I drove up here and the whole system to pay a bail here. Oh my God, you pay it one place, you drive, it was a lot. But I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to bring this work here, Richmond, everywhere we go. So thank you. If you need more information, Ashley and them have my contact. I also sent them the sheet that tells you how many people we bailed out and all of that. We'll share that with you. But thank you all.
I want to just give a little more data on pretrial incarceration in Fayette County, and I know we're running close on time, so I just want to mention, because I think the data and the stories go well together, that if we look at a snapshot of who is incarcerated pretrial in Fayette County, we have one from some data provided by the Administrative Office of the Courts. So on November 1st, 2018, the most common charge for those awaiting trial in Fayette County was drug possession. This was the most serious charge for 22% of people incarcerated pretrial in Fayette County. And then another 31% were incarcerated for 2 low-level property crimes, which are known to often be related to untreated substance use disorders. And then the data provided information about failure to appear and new criminal activity, looking at those assessments. And 87% of those incarcerated pretrial in Fayette County were deemed low or moderate risk of failure to appear in court if released. And 82% were determined to be low or moderate risk of committing new criminal activity if released. Meaning, according to the current law, they could be released and should be released, and yet are being held. And I'm really glad Shamika was talking about the financial costs, right? There are so many costs, and so we've been talking about the individual, family, and social costs of pretrial incarceration. And the financial costs on counties are significant as well. The outgoing Secretary of the Justice Cabinet recently testified before a legislative committee that in 2016, 37,000 people assessed low or moderate risk were held before trial for an average of 109 days at a cost of over $100 million to local governments. Is this what we want our counties to invest in? What if we spent these tens of millions of dollars on substance use treatment and education? incarcerating people who are presumed innocent, which is harmful to individuals, their families, and may even be making our counties and our state less safe, and in effect pressuring people to plead guilty. Is that what we want our counties to do and our state to do as a whole? Well, for the bail reform advocates in this room, the answer is no. As a state and as a county, we've got to address these unjust practices of locking the majority of people up pretrial with only those who can afford to pay getting out. And as Shamika's data shows and other state level data shows, for the vast majority of people who are released pretrial, they do come back to court. And they don't get rearrested. And certainly, when people need supports to make their court dates and to address underlying substance use disorders, they should be connected to those services like we see is happening with the Bail Project work in Louisville, rather than incarcerated. As a good friend of mine, Amanda, who's an expert on these issues, often says, and happens to be in this room, she often says, jail doesn't make anybody better. And there are other states that are reforming their bail systems in really important ways, but we can even look at other parts of our own state. We can look at the work of the Bail Project in Louisville and see that people can be released and be connected to services and have success in their cases. And we can look at Barron County. Has anybody been to Glasgow, Western Kentucky? Yeah, you're from Glasgow. Well, if I had a shirt, Glasgow, Kentucky, I have recently spent some time there and looking at their data and spending time in that community. They have one of the highest rates of release without financial conditions in the state, and their community is better off for it. So Fayette County lets out just 18% without financial conditions. In Barron County, it's 64%, without being subject to money bail. And so we can learn from Barron County, we can learn from the work of the Louisville Bail Project, and we can and must do better. And Natalie has a few words on what we can do.
Thank you, Ashley. And thank everyone else that came today. I am wrapping us up. We are very close to time. My name is Natalie Cunningham, and I'm the Outreach Director for the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy. And I just really appreciate the energy in this room. I appreciate the energy that is behind bail reform in Kentucky right now. So the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy does obviously a lot of research, but we also follow policy very closely throughout the state and on the legislature. And we expect to see serious conversations about bail reform this coming legislative session, which starts in January. We're likely to see one or more bills to reform our pretrial system, and KSEP, along with our partners, will be following those along. And so what we ask you to do is to follow us along, with us, and we will keep you up to date. We will go through those proposals and piece out the merits of them and be able to see if they're actually going to help, if they're going to make meaningful differences for people so they can get out and live their lives while they await trial, instead of what we've heard today of what people have to go through. So I want to thank everyone for coming, and I want to tell you that what you can do is what we can all do every day of the year, but I think it's a great way to celebrate the holidays, is to contact your county and state decision makers. They would love to hear you, especially right now, and let them know that you want bail reform and you want it right now. Let them know that we want legislation to address the unfair and harmful bail practices across the state, that we want to see people who are detained have a speedy trial, as if you grew up thinking was in our Constitution, and that we don't want our county to invest in these harmful practices any longer. So I just want to thank everyone for coming. We have information outside. Dr. Spalding here has a great report on what every county across the state is doing. We have information on the Bail Project, on that Eastern Kentucky Arts Organization, and we will be staying for a Q&A afterwards. We want to let you all, release yourselves, but we will be in this little room across the hall for a Q&A after the event is over. But if Mitch would like to bring us another song, we would love to hear from you again, and thank everyone again for coming.
It's real easy to feel like I can't make a difference, I'm just one person, but that is exactly what it takes. And I remember being in the 6th grade coming home and saying, Daddy, they're burning down the rainforest. And my daddy said, what do you want me to do? I said, we got to do something. He said, son, you're just a drop in the bucket. That inspired this song. It's a crazy world we live in. Bad news all around. Brothers and sisters, if we're gonna make a difference, we're gonna have to stand our ground. Be a drop in the bucket, and a bucket in the pond. And the pond fills the river, and the river rushes on. And the river swells a river until the power can't be stopped. What becomes a mighty ocean started as a drop. Down in Alabama, a lady boarded a bus. The driver said, you're black, you gotta sit in the back. Rosa said, I've had enough. Yeah, she was a drop in the bucket, and a bucket in the pond. And the pond fills the river, and the river rushes on. And the river swells a river until the power can't be stopped. What becomes a mighty ocean started as a drop. In the alleys of Calcutta, Mother Teresa lived her life. She did much more than feed the poor. She taught us how to shine our light. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, yeah. Let's shine, y'all. I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. 'Cause we're a drop in the bucket, and a bucket in the pond. And the pond fills the river, and the river rushes on. And the river swells the river until the power can't be stopped. What becomes a mighty ocean started as a drop. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you all. You all are invited back to, what room is that? Amen. Salon, where there'll be some snacks, and then we can mingle around there if there's some questions that some of us can answer. That'd be great. But once again, thank you all for coming out and beginning this stir so that we can do some change in this next year or two. Amen.